did meet with probably 4 different Mossad agents, but I never accepted their offer for shekels. So I'm a free agent.
So what kind of stuff have you been writing?
Well, my latest book is Satanion, which has a lot on the simulation theory in it that we'll get into. And then the latest one, the cover really is up cool. There in the background. It's called Metapolemos, which is a Greek word, ancient Greek word, meaning super struggle or meta war, and or Überkampf in German, Metapolemos. And that one is an overview of my entire philosophical project, divided into the domains of ontology, epistemology, ethics, aesthetics, and politics. So it summarizes my whole philosophical project in terms of the different domains of philosophy. And I wrote it to be a kind of companion volume to Philosophy of the Future, which I brought you last time.
Yes.
This one is an overview of my work in terms of the original concepts that I've developed. Philosophy of the Future was. And this one, Metapolemos, is in terms of the different domains of philosophical thought. So they're kind of good companion volumes for one another. And they're either a really good introduction to my work as a whole or a kind of executive summary.
What is the general idea of Satanion?
The general idea of Satanion. Well, the term means the aeon of Satan.
The aeon of Satan.
Or the aeon of Satana. And so I'm playing with this term Satana. It's the name of a, I guess you could call her a goddess. Really, she's more a titaness. You know, there was this distinction between the gods and the titans, which you see in Greek culture. You see it in ancient Hindu culture as well, with the Devas and the Asuras. Satana is a titaness who was conceived of as the mother of the Gorgons. You know, Medusa. So these
I just read your article.
Snake-haired, feminine deities. They were called.
They come from Medea, right?
Well, no, Medea was the chief priestess of them.
Right.
She was.
They were like her minions.
She was a witch who basically did the most to institutionalize and organize the cult of these Gorgons. And the chief Gorgon, the kind of mother of the coven of Gorgons, is Satana. This was a cult that existed in the Caucasus going back to probably at least 1000 BC. And what's interesting about, first of all, the name originally, Satana, in an old Iranian language, it means mother of 100, because she was believed to be the initiatrix of heroes. She would take these champions under the Caspian Sea into what was believed to be an underwater city. And she would train them and initiate them and confer a broadsword on them, and also potentially allow them to look into this grail that she was the keeper of. So much, much later, like 1500 years, 1800 years later, this mythos would eventually make its way into Europe, together with the migration of the Scythian and Sarmatian people, and it would become what's known as the Arthurian mythos in Europe, where this figure Satana becomes the Lady of the Lake, and then, you know, King Arthur becomes the archetypal hero who is initiated by this Grail mistress and who's given the broadsword and so forth. So the mythos of Satana is the most primordial form of what later becomes the Arthurian Grail mysticism of Europe, of Gothic Europe and Celtic Europe. And it's brought there by these Caucasian Iranian people, these northern Iranian people called the Scythians and Sarmatians. The Greeks also called the Sarmatians Amazons. Their whole legends about warrior women come from this culture because they had female warriors. In fact, I mean, they were arguably a matriarchal culture with female rulers and female warriors. A very unusual culture because they also, I think, were the first people to invent iron warfare implements and chainmail armor. In any case, they worshipped this figure, Satana. And round about, I think, 700, 800 BC, they mass invaded the Middle East. And it said they went all the way up to Egypt. So I've made an argument in some of my work that what we believe is the Hebrew term Satan, Ha-Satan, the adversary, probably comes from this Satana in origin, because the serpent symbolism associated with Satan from the book of Genesis onward,
Right.
in various aesthetic representations, has a distinctly female connotation. Like the serpent in Eden was depicted in female form often throughout the history of art. And the serpents are, of course, associated with the Gorgons. They have serpents in their hair, right? Which is really it's a reference to the fact that viper venom was used
Right.
in this cult.
Right.
Yeah, so the title comes from that, okay? It's a play on the cult of Satana. But the way I use this from the opening chapter onward is in terms of the contemporary debate over whether the UFO phenomenon is demonic. So you have these Collins elite people
Yeah.
who think that, either angels or more probably demons are
What do
what's
you call
behind
them?
the whole...
Collins elite.
The Collins elite. Yeah, the Collins elite. I think we got into this briefly the last time I was here.
Okay.
But some people think that the Collins elite was an unofficial interagency organization with representation from the CIA, the Air Force, and various other military intelligence organizations that was formed, they think, some people argue, like Nick Redfern, I think, in his book on, what was that book called?
Is Tucker Carlson a part of the Collins elite?
You say that, probably more than half jokingly. No, I don't think Tucker's part of the Collins elite, but I think that they've gotten to his head. I think that these are the people who put this in Tucker Carlson's head, and he's been talking to too many of these folks.
Yeah.
So anyway, some people think they were formed in 1947 to basically, between 45 and 47, to spy on Jack Parsons and investigate what Jack Parsons, the occultist and rocket scientist, was doing, with L. Ron Hubbard and others in the middle of the Western desert, right? I have argued...
they had a spot in Florida they were working on some stuff, didn't they?
They were all over the place.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I think it was in Florida that Hubbard, the founder of Scientology,
Of course.
stole Parsons' yacht and his girlfriend.
What?
I think that was off the coast of Florida that he did that. Yeah, they had a bad falling out.
I
later
told
on.
you, right, that the flag building for Scientology, their primary headquarters where he parked his yacht, is like 20 minutes from here.
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he used this as his launching point for his various off-the-radar activities in the oceans of the world later in his life, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, but let's not go into Hubbard land.
Yeah, let's not.
So some people think it was formed in 47 to investigate Parsons and so forth. But I actually argue in Satanion that the Collins elite probably goes back to the 1896, 1897 airship mystery,
Yeah.
where there was this patent attorney who claimed to represent the inventors of the mystery airships.
Right.
And this guy's name was Collins. And I don't want to be one of these guys who says the same thing every time. And I think we did discuss this last time.
Yeah,
but very long story short, in a nutshell, this patent attorney, George Collins, gave an extensive testimony to the San Francisco Chronicle, and I think it was 1897, about what these airships were, how they were going to be publicly declared. The company was going to publicly declare itself on the stock exchange and come forth with this technology and and all this. And then, 3 days later, the San Francisco Chronicle got back to him and wanted to have another conversation with him, at which point he said, I don't remember saying any of that stuff to you. And it turned out that he gave this entire testimony in a trance state. So this George Collins was possessed and delivered the story. And then it turned out that the supposed airship inventor was some dentist who invented dental bridges, who had dreamed of building airships from his childhood.
Right.
So this paranormal angle starts to emerge in the story, where you wonder, are these airships psychic projections of some kind? Are people's perceptions being manipulated? And I think from that time onward is when the feds got involved and started to develop theories about what kind of diabolical intelligence might actually be behind this phenomenon.
This reminds me, Steve, can you pull up my Twitter page real quick? I want to show you this photo I found of Jacques Vallée last night. I think it's very appropriate. Just go to X and just go to my account page. There's a whole article about it too.
I knew Jacques Vallée at one point.
Oh, that's not it. That's it right there. That's what you were saying last time.
Yeah.
Just scroll down Scroll down right there. Up, right. Click that photo. Look at that. Jacques
Anton
Vallée with
LaVey,
Aleister
right?
Crowley.
Oh wow.
No, that's Anton LaVey.
That's what I meant. That's what I meant. I'm sorry.
Aleister Crowley was long
That's what
dead.
I meant. Jacques Vallée and Anton LaVey.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. First of all, they both lived in San Francisco.
Right.
And, yeah, it doesn't surprise
Apparently they would have dinner parties and play Donkey Kong together.
Donkey Kong.
Yeah, that's what the article says.
Well,
But that's fascinating because Jacques Vallée always talks about how, he seems to be hyper interested in the whole angels and demons stuff.
yeah. Well, the opening line of Satanion, the first chapter is called Diabolical Disclosure. And the opening line is, how does one disclose the devil? That is, without ending the world.
Yeah.
And it comes back to this idea that the Collins elite see themselves as holding back the apocalypse because they think that if these phenomena are predominantly demonic, disclosing that would mean disclosing the Antichrist, which would then precipitate the second coming or accelerate the second coming. So they think they're somehow doing the world a favor by maintaining the secrecy regarding the phenomenon because it's essentially buying us time and holding back the end of the world. So I play with that idea at the opening of my first chapter in Satanion.
So these people are religious types. They
Phonetically.
religious fanatics.
Yeah, from the Air Force,
You'd
from
have
the
to be
CIA.
to maintain this worldview or this view of the phenomena.
Yeah, and I think that probably in going back to maybe 47 or the 1950s, they've been recruited from among evangelicals or traditionalist Catholics. But if you go back probably to the late 1890s with the airship mystery, I don't know whether they started out that way or whether they were spooked into having these kinds of beliefs, right? But look, think about it this way, Danny. If airships that look like constructions from out of Jules Verne's sci-fi novels are showing up not just in the sky over tens of states,
Yeah.
but they're landing in people's fields. And sheriffs and judges are coming up to these things and touching them and interacting with the airship pilots.
Yeah.
If it turns out that those things aren't real, meaning they're not constructed objects, there's some kind of a projection, whether it's a psychokinetic projection, like a material, what they call materialization in psychical research, or whether it's some kind of a solid hologram. In any case, as a gentleman in the 1890s, or frankly, even, this would be how most people today would read it in America, you would probably consider that a diabolical deception, a machination of the devil, right? To engage in the manipulation of perception on that kind of scale, people tend to associate that with, I don't know, satanic deception.
Oh my God. Seems silly.
Yeah, well, the prisms through which many people and institutions look at this phenomena are silly or simple-minded,
Right.
and dangerously so.
All right. We were going to talk about the moon.
Yeah. Let's go to the moon because
What's so interesting? First of all, what made you start to pay attention to the moon?
I think this is a good place to start. It was the start of my interest in it in a serious way, and it's actually a good place, a good trajectory by which to go to the moon. And that's that I paid close attention to Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project back when he was first starting it up in I think it was the late 1990s, a long time ago.
I think it was like 93 or something.
It was, yeah. I might have become aware of it in the mid to late 90s.
Okay.
So we're talking when I was like 16, 17 years old. From early on, I paid attention to the testimony that he amassed from all of these people who have been involved with the military, with defense contractors.
Do you
right?
believe all the stuff that he says?
Short answer, no.
Imagine 6 months from now, what do you look like? Now imagine you had Hims the whole time and how much better that could be. Who says your hair can't get better with age? With Hims, you're allowed to have fuller, thicker hair, and Hims is the perfect solution to make your hair great again. Try Hims Hair Loss Solutions and you'll be joining hundreds of thousands of subscribers who found their hair again without ever leaving the couch. Here's the deal. Hims offers doctor-approved, clinically backed treatments like finasteride and minoxidil. The good stuff that's proven to actually regrow hair in 3 to 6 months. Whether you're into chewables, pills, sprays, or serums,
they've got a solution that fits your vibe. No awkward doctor visits and no waiting rooms. Just answer a few quick questions online, and a medical provider will see if the treatment is right for you. If it is, they'll ship it straight to your door for free. No insurance, no problem. One low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. And with hundreds of thousands of happy customers, Hims is pretty much my go-to for getting thicker, fuller hair, and my confidence. Why wait? Hims has you covered, literally. Start your free online visit at hims.com/Danny. That's HIMS.com/DANNY for your personalized hair loss treatment options. It's hims.com/Danny. Results vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information. Make your hair great again with Hims.
But look, I think in the case of Stephen Greer, and maybe we can come back around to this because I saw parts of your show with him. In the case of Stephen Greer, you have to draw some very significant distinctions between the testimony he's getting from people who served in sensitive positions in the military-industrial complex versus his interpretations of those testimonies, which is being filtered through his own worldview and ideology, and then furthermore, his own personal experiences. Because Greer came out, like, what was it, 20 years ago, saying he himself was a contactee, I think from childhood. And he started doing these CE5, like, protocols for summoning entities and so forth, right?
Yeah.
So there's a great deal of difference between those kinds of claims versus amassing testimony from basically expert witnesses.
Yeah.
Right? And I find the stuff he did early on to be much more convincing and much more solid.
The whole the origin story of being an ER doctor to all of a sudden getting a call to go to dinner with the head of the CIA seems a little suspect to me.
I don't know. But I'll tell you what I found very interesting about some of that early testimony. There was this one case, and here we're going to get into a case of murder also.
Let's do it.
There was this one case of this, I think he was Sergeant. Yeah, Sergeant Carl Wolf, who, although he wasn't fairly high-ranking, I mean, this is how compartmentalized information works in the military. You can be a relatively low-ranking person, but if you have technical expertise in a particular area, you have to be given a high-level security clearance because you need to work on some technical aspect of a very sensitive subject. So in the case of Carl Wolf, he was a photographic technician and repairman. And I think it was 1965, so a few years before we went to the moon, right? We've got the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter going around the moon preparing for the Apollo mission. And Carl Wolf is called in his capacity as a photo technician, photographic repairman. He's called in to what they told him was an NSA facility. And I think he was stationed on Langley Air Force Base at the time. And they say, we need you to come over to this NSA facility and work on this photographic processing machine. In 1965, nobody knew what the fuck the NSA was. It was so secret that people didn't even know it existed. So Wolf assumed that it was a NASA facility. He heard NSA as NASA.
Okay.
And it also makes sense in terms of what he saw when he got there, which is that when he walked into this place, first of all, he saw scientists from all around the world. And he could tell because they were of various ethnicities. He saw Japanese people, Indian people, people from multiple countries speaking multiple languages, European languages.
I'm sure there's a few Germans in there.
Probably more than a few. And so he's taken into the photo lab, right? And there's another guy in there who's the same rank as him, I think also a sergeant. And before he gets to work on repairing this machine, this sergeant, and the two of them are in there alone, right? This sergeant can't help himself, and he breaks protocol. And he shows Carl Wolf the photographs that have been coming off this machine he was brought in to repair. And they're mosaic photographs where, the orbiter will take a bunch of images, a bunch of shots, and then they'll lay them next to each other and form a mosaic of a larger site that's been targeted for satellite photography, right? And the sergeant says, "We found a city." And he starts showing him these mosaics, putting them next to each other. And they're high-resolution photographs of a megalithic city on the dark side of the moon. Spherical buildings, polygonal buildings, obelisks like the needles in Egypt, and dishes, he said, that looked like radio telescope dishes. Huge structures, which I guess the resolution of the photographs was so good that he could tell that they weren't made of metal. They were made of something like a poured stone, kind of like concrete, which is interesting because a lot of ancient sites on Earth are made from that type of material, right? These enigmatic megalithic structures on Earth seem to have a similar construction as what Karl Wolff, at least what was presented to him as a city on the dark side of the moon. And so he's looking at this thing, and somebody walked in, and so the sergeant cuts off his illegally volunteering this classified information to Wolff, and he goes to work repairing the photography machine. But anyway, he said he went home and he expected that either that night or like sometime in the next week or sometime in the next year, we would hear about this city that had been photographed on the dark side of the moon. And of course, it was never revealed, right? So this was one of the most striking early testimonies that I heard from out of Greer's Disclosure Project that got me really interested in the moon. And what's really creepy is
that was 60 what?
65.
65.
A few years before Apollo. And what's really disturbing is that this disclosure wave that we're in the midst of right now began in 2017, right, with that New York Times piece.
Right.
So around about 2018, there are serious discussions about subpoenaing people to get testimony from them. And then later than that, Grush now, spearheaded this initiative to have people come and testify in front of Congress and release individuals from their security oaths, right? Well, guess when poor Karl Wolff met with an untimely end. 2018, 1 year after disclosure starts, his bike was run over by a truck.
How old was he?
Young, relatively.
Can you find the story of Karl Wolff?
He might have been in his 50s or something.
Wow.
And, this is what happened to John Mack, too. This is how they murdered John Mack. They had him run over on the road.
Yeah, but isn't it... Yeah, I understand that that's sketchy about John Mack, but do you think it's... Do you think it's probable that he was whacked? And it wasn't just an accident?
100%. No,
Really?
Yeah, I do think so.
He was 74 years old.
The 74-year-old...
Yeah.
Well, he was in
bicyclist.
good enough shape that he was riding his bike regularly.
Can you click on it? Oop. Page not found.
Just search Karl
Interesting.
Wolff with a K.
Oh, it's not this one?
No, well, it has a correct underneath there.
Yeah.
Oh, Carl, I see.
Karl Wolff with a K.
Claimed to have top secret NASA photos showing alien structures on the moon. He worked with a Tactical Air Command at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia and had top secret clearance in 2001. Wolff made a startling claim that NASA was hiding evidence of artificial structures on the far side of the moon. He died in a bike accident on October 10th, 2018 in New York after being hit by a tractor trailer.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So I think it's awfully convenient that just when people are going to be subpoenaed to testify under oath and released from their security clearances, this guy has an accident. Okay. So let's go further down this path to the moon.
Quick question. I don't want to derail this.
Yeah, go ahead.
But have you ever heard of a guy named Hal Povenmire? Okay. Continue.
Okay. So they had these photographs, right? Those photographs went somewhere. There was a whole room full of international scientists that Karl Wolff ran into on his way to repair that machine. So these photographs went somewhere. Well, guess what? These photographs show up again later in the history of military intelligence. In the 1970s, when Ingo Swann started to work for the Stanford Research Institute on contract for the CIA, some guy who identified himself as Lambert Dolphin, which is probably a pseudonym or code name, this Lambert Dolphin basically he pulled Ingo Swann from out of the unit that he was working with. This unit that was basically a CIA unit, right?
Yep.
So this Lambert Dolphin, whoever he was, and Swann was never able to figure out what outfit in the U.S. government this guy was really working for. He had the authority to take a CIA asset out of the CIA remote viewing program and put him on another task. And Swann was blindfolded. He was flown in a helicopter to a classified facility. It was one of these deep underground facilities. And he recounts having gone down in an elevator, like Lord knows how deep. This is in Swann's book, Penetration. So Swann says he goes down there and they want his, talent as a remote viewer, and they start targeting him, on these photographs that are inside envelopes. And he basically starts describing the moon. But he's standing in the middle of a nexus of roads inside a city on the moon. And he describes these gargantuan buildings, huge, titanic scale of construction. He sees the same obelisks that Karl Wolff describes, like the needles in ancient Egypt. And he said, by the way, I got the impression that those were purely ceremonial. They didn't have any particular function. But he saw other buildings that looked like reactor domes, like as if they were nuclear power plants or something like that, and receiving dishes and antennas and so forth. So he describes this titanic city. And, it stands to reason that whatever was in those envelopes were probably the photographs that were taken by the orbiter back in 65 before Apollo, the photographs that Karl Wolff had reported seeing while he was repairing that machine.
Wow.
So now you have a second point of confirmation. Now here's the really creepy thing, Danny. What else Ingo Swann saw on the dark side of the moon were masses of people huddled together in ramshackle shelters. People who were naked and who were being used as slave labor. This is what he said. He said that, and now the fact that they were naked and apparently breathing while working inside craters on the moon, who knows, maybe mining helium-3 or whatever, suggests that there was some kind of an artificial atmosphere, that maybe where they were working was underneath a transparent dome that wasn't, visible to Swann.
Sure.
But in any case, that's not the important point. The important point, and the disturbing one, is that he saw slave labor on the moon, and the people who were directing it were these tall Nordic-looking fellows, one of whom could see Swann. And this has been reported by other remote viewers, where sometimes when they're sent to a target, whether it's a contemporaneous target or whether it's some event in the past, they're witnessed by whoever's there,
right,
as if like they're a ghost, and those people are seeing a ghost.
Yeah.
Well, this Nordic on the dark side of the moon saw Swann, and he got the distinct impression like the guy was telling him telepathically, why the fuck are you here? You don't belong here.
Right.
Get out of here.
Interesting.
Okay? Now that fits with something else that I was told. I was told this by an officer in the CIA who had read my book, Closer Encounters, and he wanted to have a conversation with me because he told me that basically...
When was this?
This was in 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago.
This is his college. He's like, yo, I work for the CIA. Can we talk?
He knew someone I know.
Oh, okay.
And he got in touch through that person. And anyway, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but long story short, he was like, how did you put all these jigsaw puzzle pieces together? He was looking to see if there was a leak and whether it needed to be plugged.
It's springtime. That means going out more, staying out longer, and getting stinky. But that's where our sponsor Mando shines. The only thing greater than Mando is the satisfaction I get knowing I can't offend my guest's nose. Unlike Steve. Unlike all the other basic deodorants we've all tried from the grocery store, Mando lasts longer than any of them. I keep one in my jiu-jitsu bag, I keep one in my gym bag, I keep one here at the studio, and one to throw at Steve when the guests complain about his cheesy feet. What makes Mando so different? It's a cleansing bar, and it controls your odor for 72 hours. And that's perfect for long hours at work or hiding from the feds. It's safe to use on your pits, package, cracks, and feet. And it comes in bourbon leather, Clover Woods, Mount Fuji, or Pro Sport. My favorite is Mount Fuji. And don't forget, this was made by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO was being misdiagnosed and mistreated.
But Danny, why should I choose this over soap alone?
12 hours after a shower, the average man's grundle odor was a 5 out of 10. After using Mando, it was 0 out of 10. Sniff on that, Steve-O. Mando is so good, you can now get them in Walmart and Target. But for the best deals, go to shopmando.com. Mando Starter Pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, and 2 free products of your choice, like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. And as a special offer to our listeners, new customers can get $5 off the starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack by using the code DANNY at shopmando.com. That's SHOPMANDO.com. Please help support the show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando.
Because he said that there were too many things in my book that were the same conclusions that they had reached based on having access to classified information. And he was wondering how the hell I put these same pieces together in the same way.
About this moon stuff?
All kinds of things.
Okay.
The subjects that I discuss in, this book, Closer Encounters.
Yeah, okay.
And, but the moon came up, among other things. And he said, listen, after Swan was sent, we kept sending people to the moon, remote viewers. And we distinctly got the message from these guys on the moon. Do not keep sending people here. This is off limits. And we didn't listen to them. And the last viewer that we sent up there, his soul is trapped on the moon. His body is in a coma in a special medical facility run by the CIA. And his family has been given like medical compensation or whatever. They told him, they told his family that the guy had died in the line of duty or whatever. And he's been held in stasis for years and years as they wait for his soul to come back from the moon, where apparently there's the capacity to lure and trap somebody's consciousness, which they finally did to one of these CIA remote viewers after repeatedly telling them not to surveil whatever's going on up there.
Strange. We had a guy on here named David Morehouse.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was a remote viewer, he was a part of these programs for a long time. I think it was in the 70s.
I read his book Psychic Warrior. Early on.
Yeah. And he said that he remote viewed the moon and there was nothing. He's like, it's all bullshit. There's nobody there.
I don't know whether he was being blocked or what, but I can tell you some other things about the moon that are much creepier than a city on the dark side of it.
Well, and here's another thing. If there was a city, why is it only on the dark side?
Well, because that side faces away from us all the time.
So because whoever built it doesn't want us to see it?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course. That's the convenient place to put it. There's also another reason that's technical, which is that if you put, we've been studying this in terms of potential lunar colonization, that if you put listening telescopes, like the Arecibo dish, stuff that's meant to convey signals across space. If you put it on the side of the moon that faces the Earth, there's too much interference with radio signals coming from the Earth. So if you want to have basically interspace communication from the moon to elsewhere, it's better to put something on the side that always faces away from us so that you're not bombarded with radio signals that are being transmitted from the Earth.
Right.
That's a technical reason why you would do it. But mainly I think it's, for concealment purposes. Okay, but the story of what's going on the moon is a lot more it's a lot more startling than finding a city on the dark side of it, right? Because you could be dealing with a natural satellite that has been colonized at who knows what time by whatever spacefaring civilization. No, it looks like there's a much more disturbing scenario here. And our government became aware of this during Apollo 12 and 13. During Apollo 12, I think it was the lander that impacted the moon in a way that set off a seismometer that had been pre-positioned there. There was a seismograph that was pre-positioned on the moon. And when the Apollo 12 lander hit the surface of the moon, the signal that came from the seismograph was consistent with the ringing or vibration of a hollow object.
Right.
So the way that the shock wave passed through the moon suggested that there was very little inside the moon.
Right.
Okay? It rang like a bell, as they described it.
For a while, right?
In the first case, it was for almost an hour. So then they got curious about this. And in Apollo 13, they deliberately crashed the third stage of Apollo 13 into the surface of the moon to carry out a test to see whether this was a repeatable phenomenon, right? And this time, the seismograph not only confirmed the resonance passing through a hollow object, but the moon rang like a bell for 3 hours. So, and they were able to tell like how much more or less of the moon, is apparently hollow.
Right.
And it's really shocking. It's like the moon goes down for about 20 miles as a solid structure. And then on the inside, there's a distance of about 1,000 miles radially, 1,000 miles from the interior of the shell to the core,
right,
radially in every direction. In other words, the distance between Los Angeles and Seattle, or New York and St. Louis, or Paris and Prague, out from the center is hollow inside the moon.
There was a recent NASA article that came out, I think it was on the NASA website, where they said they discovered caves, like underground caverns in the moon, which would suggest that it was like maybe like a honeycomb structure on the inside or something like that.
I suspect that it's not natural caverns, but that what they're seeing are the hollows between all kinds of complex machinery that are inside that structure. One of the other things that they noted with these impact tests was that the moon it seemed to compensate and correct for the impact in a way that suggested there were oscillators inside the structure.
Right.
So I think probably there's machinery inside this thing. Now, another data point that corroborates that, going back to the remote viewers,
sure,
is that Joe McMoneagle was tasked with remote viewing Mars in 1984. And this was a CIA operation run at the Monroe Institute. So it was CIA. He was working on contract for the CIA, and this was done at the Monroe Institute.
He was the first remote viewer, right?
I think he might have been. Well, no, I think Ingo Swann was the first remote viewer.
Okay.
But I think he had the designation 001 or something like that.
Yeah, maybe it was 2. I don't know.
Yeah. But in any case, in 1984, Monroe Institute, and this has since been released. This is one of these classified documents that has since been declassified. It's called like Mars 1 million BC. You can look it up, Joe McMoneagle.
Mars 1 million BC.
Yeah, Joe McMoneagle. And so, look, Joe McMoneagle is tasked to look at... He doesn't know, of course. He's working blind to the target. That's how remote viewing is, right? But what's inside these envelopes are the photographs that the Viking probe took on Mars in 1976, where we got back these images of the pyramids and the fort and the face, infamously, right? So there are all these apparent man-made megalithic structures in the Cydonia region of Mars, which were first photographed by the Viking mission in 1976. And that's what was inside these envelopes when McMoneagle was doing this remote viewing session. And he described being in the midst of the ruins of a megalithic city with gigantic pyramids. He said they seemed like they were maybe 3 times the size of the Great Pyramid in Giza.
Wow.
And he described...
part of the Stargate project.
Yeah, he described a maze of structures under these pyramids, like subterranean tunnels and hallways. At one point, he walks through one of these hallways, and it leads to an opening, and he finds himself on the outside of the pyramid looking up at it. Looking up across the face of the pyramid. And he describes also these highways that are trenches. There are these perfectly geometric trenches cut across miles and miles of Mars' surface. And he said his impression was that they were used for a craft. Like, there are bad storms on Mars, right? So if you had hover cars or whatever, you would want them to be transiting through something that had high walls on either side. That was a, sunken channel, basically.
To avoid a sandstorm.
To avoid a sandstorm passing over the top of your head.
Yeah, like some Star Wars
So
shit.
this is basically, he describes this, okay, during his remote viewing session.
Yeah.
But he says, look, the civilization is long dead. I'm seeing, the ruins of a civilization that once was eons before this. And he was tasked at 1 million BC. So they said to him, okay, so go back to when these people were still alive and thriving. And he goes way, way back. Now, we can infer from another data point that I'll come